Sorry, the other video got cut off, so I'm going to have to make this one into a two-part, which is not usual. Okay, so I left off on immigration. In addition to the questions of the new immigrants coming into the country, there was also questions of racism and equality when it came to, of course, the new freed slaves, but also the Native Americans in the West. So as expansion throughout the United States continued, especially in the railroad, there was a lot of, what are we going to do with these natives that have already been here? And of course, as your textbook points out, reservations were created, which created its own challenges for the Native American population. So there was questions and fears within those groups of individuals as well of their role in society and maintaining their culture in their new place in our country. So there was many authors who were confronting these issues in their writing. The last theme that we're going to talk about when it comes to the Gilded Age is the role of women in society. Particularly when we get to the last readings, there were many authors that we're going to discuss that were women and that were discussing and writing about the challenges that they faced as women in the early 1900s in the United States. Particularly their desire to have a stronger role in society, but then also have society still put them in this role of frail and even not equal to the role of a man in society at that time. So there was a lot of changes in our country in the Gilded Age. And of course, in any sort of change, there's a lot of challenges. So what many of the authors did during this time is wrote about society, which led to what we call the time period as realism. So prior to realism was the Romantic period. And the Romantic period tended to be more over the top, very dramatic, very focused on the storytelling aspect of it. And there was also this desire for the authors to almost sound old school English style. Some people look at it as they were incredibly intelligent and their writing reflected it. And so, although enjoyable, it was not as easy to understand to everybody, and it didn't at times seem to represent what we would consider to be the more common man in our country. Realism almost rejected that idea. Realism wanted to talk about the challenges in society at that very moment, and they wanted to do it in a realistic, believable way. So although storytelling aspect is still there, rather than have these long-winded, over-the-top stories, they were more about the day-to-day life in America during the Gilded Age. And also the language style was very straightforward, very much what you would expect for somebody that lived in the country during this time period. In addition to just being more realistic, the stories were stories that they could see happening in our country. So the authors were reflecting on those challenges that we just talked about. They were reflecting on society and that divide of wealth. Mark Twain especially was very hard, that's where the Gilded Age even came from, was very hard on the wealthy in the country, and just that idea of such a large class divide in the United States. They were also very reflective on gender. They were very worried about the former slaves and the new immigrants. So there was this representation from all different types of life, from the extreme poor to, as we read women writing, as we read the immigrants writing, and of course as we start to read more African American writings, there was this, let me tell you what's happening in our world today, and let me try to figure out why it's happening, and let me try to come up with a solution to what's happening. So I have always enjoyed the realism movement. I hope that you do as well. And I hope that as you begin to read these characters and you begin to read their struggles, that you see how the Gilded Age and what was happening in our country had such an influence on what the authors were writing. So if you have any questions or concerns as you read, please be sure to reach out to me, and we will start to discuss this more as we begin our discussions in the class.